few seconds.
Just give us some voices from heaven when you're ready.
Okay, you should be good to go.
Right. Thank you so much. All right, we'd like to welcome you all to our public workshop meeting, June 10th, 2020. The time right now is 4:40. We'd like to make this known that this is Washington City. We will be holding a public electronic workshop on Wednesday, June 10th, 2020. June 10th, 2020 at 4:30 p.m. This meeting will be broadcast via YouTube, and linked online at https://washingtoncity.org/meetings. At this time, I'd like to. We have a motion on agenda one to get approval for the agenda. Do we have a motion for that?
A motion that we approve the agenda for this workshop meeting.
Motion. I have a second. Did you? No. I'll second that. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The agenda goes forward as listed. Item number two. Discussion of park impact fees and the possibility to waive them. This time, if we have Dan present, or if you have staff willing to break that subject down for us, we'd appreciate that.
Okay, Leanne, you're still on mute, so just take your mute off, and then I'll tell them you're present.
Yes, Drew, are the hoops on the line?
She is on the line. We're getting her ready to speak as we speak.
Okay.
He's ready.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I'll just kind of let Leanne address the council. She just has a question about her park impact fees on their project on the Bedford. It's down off of Washington Fields Road, down by where the Andruses live, where Dixie Andrus lives. It's on the other side of Fields Road. So, Leanne, I'll just kind of let you have your time before the council, addressing them on your concern about your park impact fees.
Okay. I guess I'm ready. That was kind of cutting out. I've written this down so that I can just give it briefly and to the point. Thanks for letting me have a moment of your time. We were scheduled to meet a few weeks ago. But right before the meeting, we were offered a small compromise, which we thought we could manage, and thought, okay, let's just put this behind us and keep going. We appreciated that effort, but only to find that a week later that it wouldn't be honored the way we had thought it would be. Here we are again today to try to petition our case of why we feel like the park impact fees have been unfairly assessed on Bedford Place. As you might know, we are developing Bedford subdivision. We've been working on this for so many years, and recently, because of situations and the high expense that it's taken to get development done, we switched gears with putting in the independent housing, and thought we were just going to put in these fourplexes and make a beautiful little subdivision of just little fourplexes that are rentals, but not the senior housing anymore. We've received a conditional use permit and have made the city required changes to the existing development to build and sell these small fourplexes. Each building will be sold to one owner only. And we believe this is a great addition to Washington City. It's unique. It will be a nice development. As we applied for the conditional use permit, required by the Planning Commission, I believe, to have a large amount of green area as well as nice amenities. We will be putting in a swimming pool, playground, park area. All at substantial cost. To put in a lot of green area takes away from buildings, obviously, especially in a multifamily zoning. We determined that we were just going to do one-story little fourplexes, a 4,000 square foot fourplex, possibly not maximizing even what could be done on a multifamily. But anyway, and we were always under the impression that there would be one permit per building. So we were entirely surprised when we went to get the permit, and the cost for a fourplex, a little 4,000 square foot fourplex, the impact fees, not just from Washington City, but overall, are close to $80,000
on a little fourplex. Cost breakdown, we realized that we were paying $19,200 on each little fourplex for park impact fees alone. So on this small little project, again, that's over $316,000 just in park impacts. We believe we've been treated unfairly in the fact that we've been required to put our own amenities in. We've been required to put a park in at a cost to us. By the time you do the land and the water and the amenities, the pool and everything, I mean, we're close to $500,000 that, we want to put in, but we were required to put in. And then to be asked to pay an additional $360,000 just in park impact fees, it just doesn't seem fair. Impact fees are adding, and not just a park impact, but impact fees in general are adding $20 a square foot before we even begin. It just is, it's really hard to be, on that side of it. We feel like we're being double assessed when it comes to the park fee. In ordinance number 2019-19 of Washington City, number 5, it reads, the city council may adjust the impact fee at the time the same is charged to respond to unusual circumstances in specific cases and to ensure that impact fees are imposed fairly. We would petition the city council, as it states in the provision, that they see the unfairness of this impact and make a reasonable change to Bedford subdivision park impact fees. We aren't suggesting that the residents of Bedford will never set foot in a city park, but we do believe that we are providing them with a nice area and amenities that they will enjoy right in their own neighborhood. So that's our position on it, that it just seems like we're getting double whammied. Of course, we feel like that's happening every time we turn around, but especially on this park impact. When we started, we believed that it was probably one per building, and that's what we didn't, by our own fault or whatever, we didn't know that they were charging it more than just per building. They're owned by one owner. It just seems unfair. It just seems wrong to have us, spend hundreds of thousands putting in our own park and then being charged, $250,000 more than what we thought we were going to be paying. Anyway, thank you for your time. Any questions? That's our position.
Leanne, thank you so much for presenting your case before us. Can I ask you a few questions?
Okay.
First question is this the first subdivision that you've built in Washington City?
No, we did Village next door, yeah.
Have you ever built multiple homes in which you had similar product or assessed differently?
Okay, I'm sorry, that was so garbled. Try again.
Have you had homes assessed differently in your previous developments, or have they been similar to this?
I don't, I honestly don't know, but I know the impact fees on one little building have never been $80,000, and again, that's water, power, whatever, city permits and stuff. I know that when Dan builds a home, he's built some over in Washington that are way over 4,000 square feet. The whole fees are closer to 30,
Right. No, my reason that was just to see if I could get a baseline, if this is just a unique case, or if you've had similar experiences in past developments, and it seems like you've developed substantially. I was just curious to see what your experience has been on your previous developments as pertaining to impact. Dan is not here, and he would maybe have something to say about that. It's never affected us like this. We've never had anything that was brought to our attention that was so out of the ordinary, you know what I mean? So it blindsided us, honestly. So I don't, I'm not thinking, I don't know quite how to answer that. Also on most, like on Freedom Village and stuff, they were each owned separately, so we pulled a permit on each house.
And so that was a different item because they were being sold individually, where these are being sold by one house. I mean, by one fourplex is owned by one owner. So possibly that's, maybe it was just divided up between owners, and I don't know.
Thank you, Leanne.
Sorry, Mrs. Hoops, this is Councilman Kurt Ivey. My question for you,
Okay.
would you explain, give us some history as to the solution that was offered, then it was not, it didn't follow through. Can you give us some history as to what was offered and why it was not?
Well, it's a delicate situation because I don't want to cause trouble. I don't want to be a problem or anything. But so a few weeks ago, before we were coming to council then, because I think there's others who feel our pain. So we were offered that if possibly we could not have because our project had started so long ago or whatever, that possibly, if I understood it right, that maybe we wouldn't have to pay the increase, but maybe the last year's price or whatever before the increase, because where this project was ongoing and stuff. And that, was a savings of maybe a third of what we had thought. We thought there would be one park impact per building. That's just a little fourplex. We just thought one park impact. Anyway, so we were offered to not, it took about $5,000 off a building. And so we thought, okay, we don't want to be troublemakers. We don't have a problem, and so we agreed to take that. And then, so we didn't come before city council last time. And then when we went to figure it out further, then we understood that the city would not be able to do that. And quite honestly, we feel like that's how it is on everything, but that's a whole nother story. Anyway, so it was kind of withdrawn, the offer that was given. And so, it just was. So here we are again, we were we thought, okay, we thought that would be a good solution for both sides, but apparently it wasn't.
All right. Thank you.
Did that answer that correctly? I mean, how did I explain that right?
Councilman Ivey?
I was just looking for, was it a monetary amount, or was it future impact fees, or I'm looking for a dollar amount. You said 5,000 building.
For me, it was, oh heavens, I don't have it right in front of me, but for me, it was close to $75,000. We feel like these, were 200,000 more than what we thought they were going to be. And so 75 was like, okay, that let's compromise, don't charge us the increase or whatever, where we had started the project for so long or whatever, I don't know. And so we appreciated that offer and thought, okay, you know what, let's just suck it up and take a little bit and be happy. And, even though we still felt it was unfair that we were having to put in all these amenities and all this green space and, the pool and all that, and then still be paying, instead of $20,000 a building, it came down to $15,000 in just park impact on a 4,000 square foot little building. It just seems a little bit excessive.
So can we have Drew? How many units do we have?
Oh, excuse me, you're cutting out again.
I've got his question, Leanne. It's 68 units, Councilman Coates.
Units, and our current park impact fee is
48.
It's how much?
It's $4,800 per door.
$1,400 would be the park impact fees at $4,800
per door on a little fourplex. Yeah.
And we're per unit. Per
door, not per unit, right?
Same thing. Every unit.
Okay, well, per bill. Okay,
per building.
Okay. See, and all along, so we have one permit on the building. So when we pull the permit, we have one permit on the building. So okay.
Yeah, may I ask something? City Manager Roger, could you please, you have your hand raised. Could you give us a little bit more background on this? We'd appreciate your words.
Let me address what was called the compromise first, the specific issue that deals with the hoops. And then I'll talk generally about the position of the staff on the impact fees, because this is a general position, not specific necessarily to the hoops. So what occurred on the hoops is the state law. It wasn't a compromise. It wasn't at our discretion. The state law, when an impact fee is passed by the council, there is 90 days following the passage of an impact fee in which permits that come in at that time are eligible for the previous impact fee if they'd gone up with the passage of the new impact fee. The hoops permit, the question I had asked, not being involved in any of the discussion with the hoops, when before the last council meeting, when it came back to me, was I asked what was the timing of the permit. The permit fell within the 90 days, which clearly would have been the previous impact fee, and that was what was taken back. So that was just in compliance with, they qualified for that. They qualified for that from the beginning. And that was just, and I don't know all the conversations that predated that. I can't answer that, but I wanted to answer specifically as to why that difference and what that amount was. The amount that was credited was simply, or credited, I don't know if it's credited or not charged, whatever it was the difference between what would have been the new fee and the original fee, because they fit within the statutory limits of the 90 days. So that's how come that occurred. That was what they qualified for.
So Roger, if say they pulled a building permit 2 years from now on the last building, is that to the new park impact fee?
Correct. And that's the general concept I'll point out here is once the impact fees are revised by the council and the 90 days have passed, then the new impact fees are in place, and we don't become arbitrary on who we give that to and who we don't give it to. Now there is a component within the law, and Ms. Hoops is absolutely correct that they can bring that appeal to the city council and say, because I'm unique in these circumstances, I would like the city council to evaluate relief of what the law is, your code is on impact fee. And if they're compelling, if it's a compelling, good finding argument with the council, then the council has the authority to do that. The council has in times past, very rarely, but there have been evidence that's been brought before the council. I remember one specific one that had to do with water, that they were able to show, well, it was wastewater, I should say, that they were able to show that their wastewater would not be at the same level that their water use was, that it would go off-site. And so the council looked at the evidence and said, we can make that adjustment. So all that is correct, that they're appealing it in the right way. What the council will need to do is determine the right findings with this, because that'll be a precedence that other developers will use. The only other point I would make is it's been very historical with both the Planning Commission and the City Council to oftentimes, depending on the type of unit or use going in, to require green space. Green space is not to be confused with park space. So green space, as you all know, because you've all even required it of developments, if you have a lot of multifamily, if you have areas where a green space is not being provided in the kind of the same level as you'd find in a single family residential home. So for instance, our single family residential, they can only take so much of a footprint of a piece of property, then all the rest has to be open for green space. Well, multifamily oftentimes doesn't have that. And we don't alleviate single family residents from paying for their impact fee, even though they probably offered on each individual lot more green space than other units. So what's been tradition in past, whether it's been a PUD, a PCD, oftentimes the Planning Commission and the City Council have come in and said, well, because this is a little different and because there are multi-units here and there wouldn't be as much green space, we're going to require a green space component. Now, again, the reason it differs from a park is because it does not have to be built to city standards. It does not have to be open to the public. It is not owned by Washington City. And so that's why the impact fees are still collected, because those go still to those more regional parks in which everybody's entitled to go to. Everybody is where we run our recreation programs, those type of things. So I just want to make sure that sometimes we get parks confused with green space. You yourself have requested green space. I don't know you yourself, but anyway, councils historically have requested green space on multi-units. And we have never looked at those as park equivalents. Now, again, the council, I'll make this and then I'll conclude. The council can find good findings and say, we feel in this circumstance that a more fair and equitable treatment would be X. But the reason you want to do that on findings is because you want to be prepared for the next person who says, well, I also feel that those are the findings. So I hope that answered both what the difference was on the hoops, and Drew would have to give you the numbers on that, and what the general position of staff is. Basically, your impact fee ordinance is what it is right now. It's been adopted. It is legal. You do have the right to modify that under good findings. And that's why I just wanted to point out the confusion sometimes we have with green space versus park.
Thank you very much, City Manager Roger Carter. I do have just a quick point of order in this meeting. If you have the ability, if there anyone who doesn't, please let me know. I can still see if you've raised your hand. So if there is a council member that would like to participate in this conversation, can you please continue to do that practice? It really helps us move it.
We can't dial in.
You guys can't?
We can't break feedback.
So we'll just kind of make eye contact if you want to talk next. Councilman Staley, the time is yours. Good question.
I had it, but city manager addressed it. I guess what what I was getting at was there 68 units at $4,800 was $326,000. Just getting some facts out there for everyone to see.
Right.
And my initial thought was that the condition was, hey, we would drop it back to the original impact fee of $3,700 when you came through for your plat, which was $251,600. But that's not the case because it's only the building permits that you pull at that time. So if they only pull one building permit, they'll get the reduction on the one building. But if they don't pull the second building permit until 91 days, then it would go to the 4,800.
Is that correct? That's when it applies, is when the building permit is pulled?
Yes.
Correct.
That's when fees are due. Yeah.
Okay.
So I just wanted to get those numbers
That
out
timing
there.
would have to be 90 days since when we modified.
That. So I'm sure we barely will get one or two buildings, if they get it in time.
Thank you, Councilman Coates. Councilman Staley. That was.
I think you're kind of on track of, development.
Sorry, we can't hear Councilman Staley.
Councilman Staley, stay close.
I think the mic is turned off.
There you go.
Okay, what I was saying is that I appreciated Councilman Coates bringing up that the prior park impact fee was $3,700. And it sounds like the developer, when they started this project, was anticipating that per door impact fee. Of course, that changed. Do we know the date that park impact fee changed? It seems like it was toward the end of last year, if I recall. But regardless of the date, it sounds like they've now just pulled one permit and that future permits would then be at the new rate. Is that what I'm understanding, Drew?
Yes. Yeah, the change was made in December, but after its 90 days, we actually went to the end of March. The Hoops and another project actually started their filings before the end of March. So that's why we were at least able to go back and give them this fourplex at the old rate of $3,700. But that's where that 90-day kind of kicked in. I hope that answers your question.
Councilman, the date was February 11th.
February 11th is the date that
The park and recreational impact fee portion took effect.
it took effect. Okay, so there's a delay from the time it was approved until the time it takes effect. Just a point of clarification, Drew. So you have 1,000 square foot unit as part of the fourplex, and they're now paying $4,800 for the park impact fee. let's say that I have a 5,000 square foot home. What is my park impact fee?
$4,800.
Okay. Is there any compelling justification to hold this entire project to the impact fee that was in place when it was platted, or is that completely outside of the realm of norm?
That would be outside, unfortunately, and that's kind of what I got caught up, because what happened, I've been trying to help the Hoops through this process, you know, just, and Leanne will, you know, admit and know that, but because this actually came about, we had one of the big apartment complexes being built on the intersection of Telegraph and the Washington Parkway, that it also fell into this whatever, I don't even know what you want to call it, this transaction of change of fee. And so they came back and stated, hey, I based everything on this. So we went and looked at the record, and sure enough, they had made their application before the fee changed. So we were able to go back, but he's paying for every single one of those units because it's one big project. And so I just thought, hey, maybe this can help the Hoops. And so I came back. Then after we did the deal that night, I felt bad because I thought, well, the Hoops aren't going to buy all 68 permits right now, unfortunately. They're doing one now, you know, one fourplex. So that's one, because they have 17 buildings. And I thought if they end up going a year and a half, 2 years of this, I'm not the one that should be, you know, I can't give them that credit for a year and a half to 2 years. And that's why I felt bad, had to go back and tell them that, you know, I'd forgotten about that gap in between of their permits, multiples versus the one apartment complex pulling 100 and some odd units, paying for it all at the same time. So I hope that kind of helps clarify that. And again, I do apologize to Leanne, as I have personally already, and that's kind of where that misinformation came. And it just bugged me that whole night in my mind, thinking, oh no, I've got to come back and get this right and get it all clarified out. So I hope that answers some of that as well.
But it sounds like she had more of a, just conversationally with your point there, Councilman Staley, it sounds like she had more also a point that they miscalculated, not just on that there was an increase, but the way that it is actually assessed. She was looking at per building rather than, and to your other question to Drew, I know you were directing that to Drew, but to us as a council, we would be somewhat establishing precedents if we wanted to give an allowance to this. Now, if the precedents we establish is just for a time when the fee may change, that's going to go away fairly soon. But we do have the option to adjust that, but we are establishing precedent.
See, and
sorry, just jumping in.
Yeah, no, and kind of what I wanted to address is I look at, so we do make them typically in a PCD do green space. We give them more density, so they get more units. And so that's kind of the trade-off. And it's not a park, it's green space for just their units, private. No one else can use it, so it doesn't benefit the city at all. The other thing I look at is who needs more park space than apartments and townhomes. My kids can go in our backyard and we play in our big grass. We have a larger grass area and we play. We have that room. We don't have to go to a park. But in townhomes and stuff, they need those areas to go to parks. So I always look at the impact fees are actually more beneficial for the townhomes and the apartment complexes because of those areas.
One thing I'd like to address at the council,
but it is a catch-22 though, right? Because they are the people who need it likely the most because they have the least available space, but they're also the least likely to be able to pay for it because they budgetary reasons. They're in a smaller home because many of them are in a smaller home because it's.
I understand what you're saying, but I also and I mean, I'll go on record and say it. I wasn't all for what the increase happened on the last council, and I understand the process, but I thought, and that's where I'm falling back to more of on how can we help them get the impact fee for what they budgeted and planned for their project, because that's an increase of $65,000 that they did not plan for when they started this process. But I also think we have an obligation to everyone else who we've done it that, hey, this is the park impact fees that we need for our areas to get us a park. And so if we don't, how are we going to supplement that cash as a council?
Within that, where we're talking about this, we may have an area where there's 8 apartments owned by one owner. One person comes in and buys 2 duplexes. regardless of the ownership, it's the per domicile impact to our infrastructure that we need to make sure is constant. And so though there may be one person buying 4 units, there are 4 domiciles that will be used by 4 different residencies. So I think we need to stay true to our capital facilities plan to make sure that we're supporting that wear and tear because of family impact to our services. Councilman Ivey.
Yes, I guess the way I'm looking at this is that the Hoopses were offered a solution. So obviously there must have been some consideration that they needed some relief for that. And then that wasn't able to be played out for what sounds like an honest oversight. But the fact remains is that they were offered a settlement. And as the council, we have the right to look at each case in a manner with fair being the key word. Now, if other people want to come forward in the future, they have the right to present just like the Hoops have. So I don't see that as a deterrent, that if other people want to come and present their case the same way. But the way that I see this with the Hoops is that we have, I feel, where they were offered something and then it was retracted, I feel like that we need to give consideration, and we have the right to do that under this new ordinance. The city council may adjust the impact fee at the time the same for B to ensure that impact fees are imposed fairly. Now, I don't know the reasons that they were offered this solution, but obviously they were offered that for some good reasons. So I'm more inclined to offer some relief from, obviously not the full amount, but the 75,000 that they were originally offered. In my opinion, I think that we have a duty as a city to honor at least the commitment that was made by the city originally.
Councilman, Chairman, I'd like to see if, I don't know if an offer was.
City Manager Carter, could you clarify?
I'd just like to have Drew clarify if an offer for the whole project, irrespective of the permit, was actually offered, because that would clearly violate the ordinance that the city council has passed. What we're indicating here is the city council is the current established policy, which is that it's on a per unit, per door.
We understand that.
And that it was, and so I don't think, and Drew may need to clarify this with me, I don't think that the community development ever said that irrespective of in the future how many units you're putting in. I appreciate the fact that there may be some misunderstanding, but I would like to hear from Drew to see that if in fact that was offered, that irrespective of when the permit comes in, you would be able to receive the earlier pricing. I was never under that understanding. So I just want to be clear that we well, at least I've not been led to believe that there was an offer made for an in perpetuity application process that would clearly violate what we've always done historically, would be honored at that rate. But Drew may have to answer that one.
Let's have Councilman Ward.
Now, how about I clarify that, please, one moment. Drew, will you please clarify that? Then we'll move on to Councilman Ward.
Yeah, what happened is, and is my mic on? Yeah. So in talking with Leanne, and again, it was in that 11th hour and 58th minute before that time they were going to meet with you. And I did offer, because I knew they had a permit in. And then right at the end of the conversation, Leanne said, and that's going to be good for all the units from now until the end. And that's where I did make a mistake. And I can't remember if I said yes or I said, what it was, but I think she left the understanding, as she probably did, that it was for all of those. And then that's where I was telling you, over that night, I started thinking this conversation in my mind just isn't right. And it is my fault. There's no doubt about that, going for that. And so that's probably where we're at the time, where it was pulled off originally and then back on for tonight, because again, it was right at the last sentence. And again, I was trying to get in to make sure we didn't get into the meeting without it. And again, that probably was a mistake on my part to say, but I'm just trying to remember those words, but I think I can see where that came from. And again, that was my bad. And again, I don't have that authority to do that. So,
Councilman Ward.
Well, that's kind of where I was going to jump in. It sounds to me like the city staff represented the law as it currently stands and a loophole within the law to help the citizen with the developer with that. But the issue before us at this point, and it is of a specific nature, but also has ramifications for setting a precedent. Do we want to carve into our park impact fees and make determinations? What level do we want to make that for future issues? Because essentially, if we're making one for this one, we are setting a precedent where others, we do have some limitations to kind of make a statement on why we're doing this, but as we set that, we're encouraging other developers to come back in and say, okay, well, I fit that criteria as well, or I fit others, which is fine. But I do think we need to look at the bigger picture as well, not just this single issue.
I appreciate that, Councilman Ward. The bigger picture that's on my mind is that our capital facilities plan represents that big picture where we're trying to establish a level of service that we will need. And we assess these particular fees to maintain that level of service. I know that not all council is present or may not agree with the past changes in our level of change, our impact fee changes, but we address that level of service through many different meetings. And so my concern on this, just to kind of help move the council forward, if there truly is a point in which the developer felt like they were told or directed or given an expectation and followed that based off of our expectation, that's where I'm open to consideration. That's the part where
are they still on the line?
I believe they are. So my point on this is if they were locked into a previous understanding of their development and said, okay, we're before this change, we're landlocked in, or we're godfathered in, better say, all of our units will fall underneath this. If that was what was conveyed and what was understood at that time, that's my biggest concern, because
but doesn't sound like in this case, not only are we there, but we're also, they had a complete misunderstanding that this would be per building, not just per residence.
But who knows where, I don't know where that came, because it's always been a unit in the city.
It's always been unit, and I agree with that.
I can understand if there was a misinterpretation of, hey, that gets carried on from now on. And that was a 2-week conversation, which is why they didn't come to us. Now they're coming to us asking for that change.
Sure.
Right. I feel like they're acting within the understanding which they've been giving of our procedures and law and codes. I don't feel like they're acting out of norm. One of my main reasons for asking the applicant to explain how they've been developing previously is obviously they have done development in St. George and Washington. They know how we do things per domicile. I know that there's a frustration and increased cost, but our increased costs represent a need and a level of service. They're being passed on a reason.
Well, I'm glad they're bringing it before us. Frankly, we made a change, and when I say we, it wasn't this council, it was previous council made a change. I'm grateful to hear the ramifications of that as it comes out to real people in real time. Helps us kind of remember the changes we make. So, but I'm not certain I know yet the solution to this one.
So Mayor Pro Tem, is Leanne Hoop still on the line? So
Leanne, are you present on the line right now still?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Councilman Ivey.
Well, I was just going to ask Hoops if she would give her recollection of the events as to how we arrived at the 75,000 and what your feelings are on what's fair, or so that we can kind of drill down on what we feel is fair and move forward with this.
Honestly, and this is our bad. We had no idea, and this is our bad, but we had no idea it was charged. We thought we were having one impact per building, because that's how we were one permit, one owner, And so honestly, when you guys are saying it's, just the increase over, no, in our mind, it's 75% more, because we just thought we had one permit. So in our budget, we had like 40,000, 30,000 or something. I don't know what we had in impact to the city, and so this totally floored us by, 250,000, it's 75% more than what which is our bad, because we didn't know the ordinance was per door, not per building. And I don't know if that changed somewhere along the way or whatever, because we have been going on this project for a long time, obviously. And so that was our first, shock. And so that's why, that's our first arrest. And so that's when we understood that if we could at least get the last year's pricing, maybe the reason we haven't started sooner is we had to have our plat recorded and all that because, you can't pull a permit till that happens. And then when we switched gears, we had to redo everything. We had, the Public Works required that we put in bigger water meters and, all kinds of things that just keep happening and happening that is delayed forever. Possibly we would have had more approved before. I don't know. Anyway, so when I understood that it was going to be, 1,000 or less, which was at 75,000. And so instead of coming and, pleading our case before the council, we obviously thought, okay, let's just take that. Yeah, it's not, a third of what we thought, but, we'll try to work with that. Again, 80,000 in impacts, not just city, but impacts on a little 4,000 square foot building is just crazy. It's hard to stay in business, And so we were grateful for even just the, that little concession, and thought, okay, let's just try to get along and revamp our project and, try to be able to pay that extra money. And so then when we found out it was, I had no idea that we were under a 90-day thing. I didn't know why the one permit when, that they discounted it. I didn't know all that background that Roger and I wasn't aware.
Thank you. One more a clarifying question from Councilman Ivey.
Yes. So just specifically, Mrs. Hoops, speaking about what you feel is fair. I mean, that's what I really want you to drill down on is what you feel is fair, where, you were offered something, there's some question as to how much that was and what exactly took place. Just share with us what you feel is fair in all this.
Well, oh heavens, I don't think what we thought was fair and what we were willing to accept, you know what I mean? What we were offered the time before, to use last year's prices or whatever, and maybe, yeah, we were thinking, that was fair. That was not what we wanted to hear, but it was fair.
Okay.
And so we were just like,
Leanne Hoops, one quick question for you. When you were developing everything last year, were you aware that your impact fees were roughly $251.6 thousand at that time?
Okay, say that again, please.
Well, at the time, I'm just kind of doing the math here. I'm hearing your projections and some concerns that you've had. But before this change, the amount of units that you were putting in would already be roughly $251,600 to do the units that you had projected at that time. So I'm hearing a significant difference between what you're willing to pay and what you budgeted to pay and what you're concerned about with this new adjustment. A lot of things are just not lining up for me, and it's making me hard to follow what we can do.
Okay, sorry about that. So what we thought was obviously incorrect. We thought there was one impact per building, and that's probably where our first mess up was, because all along for the last few years as we've tried to figure this, so that was our error. We only budgeted for one permit per building. So when it came to forth that was the parks were the only one charging per door, that was a total shock to us. So that was hundreds of thousands, right? So that'd be, I can't even do the math. Yeah. A couple 100,000 more just on park impact more. Okay. So that was what was shocking to us. So then when we were offered to just have last year's, I didn't even, that discount on it of 5,000 per unit, we were just happy that in our mind, because we, that was much better than.
Mrs. Hoops, this is Bailey. I want to jump in really quick. I think really, there's nothing that we can address with what you understood between a per door or per building. So let's put that behind us.
Okay, but
I think
I'm not understanding.
We can't do anything about you are not understanding whether the park impact fee is
Right.
per unit or per building.
Right.
But let me tell you what our concern as this body is. We want to understand what you let's establish the fact that you realize now that the park's impact fee is per door. And let's
Right.
that at the end of 2019, that park impact fee changed from $3,700 per door to $4,800
Yes.
per door. And you had a 90-day window in which you could pull permits at the prior $3,700 rate.
Okay.
At this point, you come in and you speak to Drew, and Drew, as he always is trying to do his best to help the developer and help follow the guidelines within. He has a conversation with you. You leave this conversation understanding that you have to pay a impact fee of $3,700 on 68 units. Is that correct?
That is what I said. That's what I understood. Yes. I didn't know what you were asking exactly. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I understood.
And then once Drew realized that this impact fee is triggered not when the plat is recorded, but when the permit is pulled, then he came back and said, yes, you can have $3,700 on this first building impact fee.
Or pay for all of them.
Or pay for all of them. But going forward is going to be the higher rate. So what this council's trying to determine collectively is whether or not you were under the impression that you would have the old park impact fee, and whether or not it makes sense for this council to honor that or not. Is that fair with my peers?
That makes sense.
So Councilman Ivy is asking if that's what you felt like, if you felt like you had an offer for $3,700 per unit, and if you felt like that would be fair, or what you think would be fair, and then this council will discuss and decide.
Yes. You know what? I'm sorry. Everything is not. I'm getting not a full hearing what you're saying and stuff. So that's why I feel like I've not said the right thing. Yes. At the time that we thought that the reason we didn't, it was an hour before the meeting, and we thought, okay, yes, if they'll give us that much off of each unit, yeah, we can live with that. And so that is the understanding that we had. And then, and then when, yeah, I was waiting for something kind of in writing and for, yeah.
I think we understand where you are. Council, if I can we have our final thoughts on this and move on from this issue? Please just kind of.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you so much, Leanne. We'll discuss this. So if I'll just go out of the room. Anything else?
Okay, I'm sorry for the confusion. It's really hard to hear on these things. I didn't need so. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration. Okay, appreciate it. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Oh, you can hang on. We're just having some final considerations here. Councilman Coates, any final thoughts?
My final thoughts is I understand people make budgets. So the increase, I can understand that can totally affect your budget if you based everything off a certain dollar amount of the per unit. I do believe that these units they have just as many people, they use just as many parks. So they should contribute just as much. They get the higher density because they put in those other amenities. So we allow those higher densities. And that's kind of where I land with this. I understand where they're at. I'm open to giving a reduction back to the 3,700, but I think we need to find the money in our fund balance or something like that to account for that money, or be okay with the level of service going down. That's kind of my thoughts on this project. But I feel like our staff they're doing a good job. These are weird loopholes that we're finding, but I don't think there was any signed contract saying this is what it is either. Right. It's, hey, we're trying to help you. This is what we think. And I think Drew addressed it, called them back and said, hey, that's not really what it is. And so we're back on. Yeah, it costs 2 weeks, but it costs 2 weeks of getting this figured out and resolved. At least we didn't go down the road 2 years and then they pull their second permit and be upset.
Correct.
So I just want, that's my final thought.
Thank you, Councilman Coates. Councilman Ivey.
Yes, and I agree. Mr. Ellerman does a wonderful job. Mr. and Mrs. Hoops are some of the best builders that we've ever known. We have a respect level with them. Again, with me, I feel like the key issue is that, you know, I'm stuck on that word, what we deem to be fair. This seems to be some unique circumstances surrounding this, and I don't necessarily want to do the full impact difference, but I think some consideration as a showing of goodwill, or that maybe we have some skin in the game, so to speak, to try to make it more fair in the Hoops' site. But that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Staley, any last thoughts?
I actually just, I would concur with Councilman Coates and Councilman Ivey. So I would support some sort of compromise based on, you know, a misunderstanding. And I would leave that to the judgment of staff and to loop us in to make sure we're comfortable with that. But I think those two made some great points on how to handle it.
Okay. Councilman Moore, final thoughts?
Yeah, a couple. Drew, while I'm bringing up a couple other points, would you just bring that up for me so I make sure I know exactly which parcel we're actually talking about? And then Councilman Coates, you mentioned this is PCD, right? This property we're looking at is actually a PCD. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to add that into my questions to just check that off. Thank you. And I appreciate your point about deciding how to fund it if we're going to do that. To me, I just don't really feel like we can look at this as a one-off issue, that we're going to establish some precedent. So if for example, we decide, look, we want to do this, I really would like it to encourage us to attach that precedence, or at least contemplate that precedence that we want to establish, to say either, for example, when we make a change to our park impact fees, that we're going to have a time frame where we will allow applicants to come in. I think you need to have another precedence above and beyond that, though, because it will be too easy for people to just say, well, I misunderstood for the next year and a half, that we don't want to change that. Or for example, that we want to say, well, we really want fourplexes in our city. We think we're underrepresented with fourplexes, and so we want to bring those in, and we'll accept applications for there. But I really think we need to look at beyond just this issue and into the precedents that we're going to set. So that'd be my point.
I appreciate the council and bringing all their points into discussion. My final thoughts are kind of in conjunction with all that's been said. The precedence is important. I've recently talked to some developers that have spent more than $1 million for the same impact fees and the same product that's being built for our community. I find it a little bit of a complicated issue when there are misunderstandings on so many levels. If it was just one thing said on a staff's part that for us to consider, but I feel like this is multiple levels on both parties, where I don't know if this is something we should really consider as an eligible shift for such an important part of our community. Our impact fees are not a joke, and we already have so much skin in the game in how we already step forward to set these numbers. They come through much thought and much communication with those who are developing in our community. So this is unique. I would ask the staff to definitely come forth and give us a better idea of a resolution. And if we were to go one way or another, I would like this to come back before council, because I feel like this is so important that I would not like the staff to resolve this. I'd like this to come back to council before something is made as a decision on this.
I think it has to, right? So I'd make a move that we move this to a council agenda item to address at next week's council. Is that I'd ask staff if that's enough time to accommodate, to get everything if they need put together.
Would you add wherein staff would bring forward a recommended resolution?
Yeah, is that, do we need a resolution, or
city manager?
I guess I'd ask the city manager, Carter.
I think that's what I've heard.
Yeah, I think our preference would be, because I agree with many of the comments about it's going to be, the council will want to be careful how they craft the findings. And again, the reason for that, again, is no loopholes, none of that language. It's because you want to avoid any broad language, which then creates some precedents. And that's to
Is something that would be better set to be brought forth to another workshop, or better to be put forward in a council meeting?
I'm happy to do this. And again, I'm going to speak a little bit on behalf of Jeff, Andrew. I think if you'll schedule this for the next work session, you're welcome to also schedule it that same night for the council meeting, but we'll have discussion at the work session. If the council feels comfortable with what that is, it can be then still voted on that evening. If not, then we can just continue it. But I do think some thoughtfulness in crafting the language. So I agree with the council on letting us have time to do that. But I think in order to not unduly delay, I think we can, and there's Jeff dive in.
So, all right, Attorney Starkey, can you give us some insight?
Yeah, and I'll just make this real quick. But again, these are where we struggle with impact fees, and for this reason. That's why state law is so fluid and comprises so much of the land use law in the state of Utah is impact fees, because of the issues it brings with it and how complicated it is. The current, just bear this in mind. There's one provision to remember, and that is everybody under state law for an impact fee has the right to challenge their particular project, whatever the charge is under state law and as applied through local ordinance, that they can come in to show that the study that was done, which set that particular charge for that impact fee, can always be challenged by facts from professionals that show that, well, yes, that's true, generally speaking, but in our project, the impact is less because of this. And then the council has the right to take actual facts and apply criteria to determine if it wants to reduce that. That's one provision that's there, is provided for. It's no question about how it's supposed to work. We're now in another realm where it says, well, we think there's things that have nothing to do necessarily with whether or not this is being fairly applied under state law and our particular ordinance. We think there's something more to it that's a little more in the, touchy-feely area that just doesn't seem right for these particular reasons. So all I'm saying is, it sounds like that's where we're moving to possibly consider it. Not something just under the challenge to how impact fees should be applied to everybody. And it's not fair in this particular case. But in the case you will be looking at it, it will be, there's other reasons and justifications for which we want to somehow articulate findings, why we're reducing it. That would be the reason we're going to approve it. So that's what you'd have to be thinking of just on your own before we get there in 2 weeks. It's going to have to fall into that second one, because there's been no challenge to it. It simply isn't fair as applied.
Thank you, Attorney Starkey. I feel like we've had enough idea what we should move on this. We look forward to seeing this in the next workshop. Let's move on to discussion item number 3, discussion on the update on the irrigation study, Public Works Director Mike Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have Dustin with Sunrise Engineers with me here, and going to let him go ahead and present this. We added it into your packet, so if you wanted to follow along with that, you can. So with that, I'll turn over to Dustin. So can you see the screen okay?
We can see the screen and we can see you presenting.
Okay.
Very good. All right. Well, pleasure to be with you tonight. So I was invited here to give an update on your secondary water master plan. It's been going on for the last year or so. As many of you know, this is a second phase to the secondary water master plan. The first phase, kind of a high level view, of what it might take to implement and possibly cost to incorporate a secondary water, or in other words, a pressurized irrigation system. The purposes of this second phase was to get more into detail as far as what the implementation and phasing might look like, capital costs, coordinating with entities that might be to acquire water or whatnot, and especially to just develop what the costs would be to the users of the system, how that would relate to their culinary water usage and fees, what an irrigation fee might look like. So just want to really briefly go through just a couple of highlights here. Advance the screen here. Scroll. There we go. So obviously Washington City has expanded substantially in the last 20, 25 years, which is about the time one of the first irrigation master plans was done. This would be just a high-level view of what a backbone system would look like in the city. That's a lot of streets and pipelines and valves and whatnot. We can go. What we looked at is breaking this into phases, and I apologize. This first part may be a little redundant. We presented here. Well, it would have been before this full council was in place, but the first phase would take into account the area, the old part of town, which is currently on many of the users are on a ditch irrigation system. It would incorporate well number 1, which sits up above the Warm Springs development, and a good well. It currently provides water to the parks and cemetery. So the water is available there to provide for this area. The missing part of an pressurized irrigation system would be a storage reservoir and a delivery system, the pipe network. And so that would be the reason this would be part of a first phase, obviously, is because it's an area that already includes irrigation and there's a good water source. The phase 2A would be an area south of the river. And the reason this phase was, or this part of the phase was set up was these are areas out in Washington Fields that currently have dry irrigation lines in the ground. Since 2006, I believe, the city has required new development to put irrigation lines in with their development for a future anticipated irrigation system. So this area that you see there in green, those pipes and valves are already there. And so, which is good, the needed aspect of pressurizing that system would be storage and a water source. The two options for source that we've been discussing and meeting with are the Washington County Water Conservancy District, delivering water from Quail Lake or Sand Hollow, and water that would be available through the St. George Washington Fields Canal Company. The Water Conservancy District water, frankly, is more costly, but it is higher quality. The irrigation company water, as many of you know, is high TDS or salts and not ideal for irrigation. May require some blending or treatment of some sort, or just some education on how the residents would utilize it. But it is at a cheaper rate. And so those are the initial phases that we would anticipate to get this off the ground if the city chose to move forward with a pressurized irrigation system. This is just a summary of cost estimates for those initial phases. It's substantial. I mean, whether you're building storage reservoirs, pipe networks through existing streets, paying for water from whether it's the canal company or the Water Conservancy District, this is a significant cost. And if you get into build out over the entire system, ultimately right now it'd be.
Can you hear if I interject a question as you go?
Oh, please. Thank you.
Okay. So are we suggesting that we might purchase water from the Conservancy District for irrigation? That would be culinary water, correct?
They have both. You currently receive culinary water from the district. It's at a different rate, but they do have raw water available, which you already do purchase for your water treatment plant out along SR9 on Telegraph there. That is raw water from Washington County Water Conservancy District that the city then treats before pumping up to your Grapevine tank.
So basically the difference between the water, if we purchase it from the Conservancy District, it would just be before it was treated.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so it would be less cost than the culinary water that you receive from the district. We'll have, so I'll get it here to the end. We're close on a draft report that would have all these details and what those costs are specific to water source and all that. I wanted to just kind of go through a high level here, but yes, that's a good question. They do have raw water available.
Hey, this is Councilman Ivy. Can I ask you a question right there?
You bet.
So because of the TDS, the high salt, is it considered brackish water then?
Yeah, very
brackish. So is that secondary wells? Is there any brackish water available in the Washington Fields? I keep hearing about, and this may not be your area of expertise, but I understand that there's wells available that we could tap for brackish water that may feed the system. Have we looked into that overall costs at all?
Yes, and I've omitted that on this summary. That is one of the alternatives we have looked at. There, Carl Larson's development. He has a few wells, and they have a means that they treat that. It's on a smaller scale than what you're looking at, and frankly, haven't been able to verify exactly how that works. But yes, that is a possibility there, and something that the city could continue to look at. That groundwater is also brackish.
It's actually higher in TDS than the canal water.
Yeah.
The problem we have to worry about though is with the brackish and the high TDS is that irrigation drip systems don't always work the best. And so we just got to be cautious on what we're doing. We all know that the irrigation is not going to be, if we use these secondary sources, it isn't culinary, it's not as premium. So it's going to be not as good a water. We got to pick the better of the least, not as good.
Well, it limits you on what plants you can use as plant as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But there is ways to treat it. I'm just saying it's still not going to be pristine culinary water.
You know, you increase the alkalinity and you're basically putting dissolved salts over the ground. And you've seen this in the fields where the crust of the ground looks kind of white. The total dissolved solids really impact the ability for the plant to transmit nutrients and photosynthesize and otherwise. You can see it in some places where those well and water sources come and are able to come to the top. You can see that things don't grow very well. So this is more than just, this is proposing the infrastructure, but the overall impact is a unique conversation. I appreciate that brought up at the council. Any further things to be presented forth at this time? From our presenters, is there anything else that you'd like to present to the council at this time?
Let me just continue real quick, just a couple items. As I mentioned, probably one of the key questions I remember from the council when we started this analysis, what does having a secondary water system do to what does it do to the residents? How does it impact their usage? How does it impact their rates? From your water master plan here a couple of years ago, the analysis determined that your average resident uses it's about 50-50 split on the indoor use and the outdoor use. And so if this chart right here shows The top scenario being if you just stayed where you're at now, what the expected progression would be of your water rates over the next 20, 30, 40 years. Right now, your average residential connection uses about 13,000 gallons a month on it, and pays a water bill that's going to be around $40. Obviously, higher users are going to pay there's a tiered structure that goes up the more you use it. But that's what that first white row represents. The second scenario is if the city were to implement a culinary or a secondary water system, we've projected what your irrigation rate would be for those that have an irrigation connection. Again, we're looking at phasing this. So initially you just have the phase 1 residents that would be on board. And then you'd have others that would just still be paying a culinary rate for their outdoor as well as indoor. And so your combined user rate for those that have an irrigation connection would go up. It would be $55, $56 a connection. Obviously, these are estimates, but it's going to go up. And the reason is it's a huge capital cost up front to get that off the ground. We're looking about 25 to 30 years out before it's break even of where the overall combined rate would actually drop below what just continuing with an culinary water rate would be.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So we think that's, you're going to be saving culinary water to the tune of, up to maybe a 50% reduction in many cases, with them using lower quality water for their irrigation. But obviously a $15 a month impact we recognize would be significant to a resident. But that's just the fact of upfront capital costs to build the system and those estimates that we put before. I'm going to kind of go through here. The other question that came up from the council was with regard to shares within the existing irrigation users in the old part of town. I've got here, maybe we won't go through it just yet, but there was a report provided by Rick Hafen, who's probably the leading expert on water rights and water use in the area. His evaluations I've summarized here in some bullet points, that the city owns the water rights for all that irrigation water. Shareholders have been paying for access to the water, and this is just a chart that has some examples of a few of the shareholders. They vary from anywhere to an eighth of a share to multiple shares. It's a pretty big variety, but they've had access to that. That's their access to water. The irrigation system has been highly subsidized by both the city's general fund and the water department. The rates that they pay for those shares do not cover the costs that it takes to operate that system. And that the reason that's one of the reasons that's critical in Mr. Hafen's assessment, he suggested that maybe the value to a share would be the difference in their cost for that irrigation water as they're in their current standing versus what they would pay for that water if they were paying for a culinary, or in this case, a pressurized water system, irrigation system. So that's something to consider. We've put in the report a recommendation, maybe look at offsetting a connection fee or a hookup fee when people go to hook onto the system. That maybe those people with shares have a ratio or a credit of that on that hookup. But that's something else. Again, in the report, we've got quite a bit more detail on how that's evaluated, but that's kind of the summary of what we found with regard to those irrigation shares. Just last item that was part of our scope to look into is just possible funding sources. That's a lot of money. So these are a few possible resources for looking into grants or loans. Bureau of Reclamation has a Water Smart grant that incentivizes smart use of water. It is competitive and would require an application and you know, some good luck or politics or something. But anyway, it is a competitive grant. Division of Water Resources, Community Impact Board also have funding resources. Those would likely be low interest loans, but depending on how it's presented or where their standing is financially, there may be some opportunities for better funding options. So that's kind of a nutshell. As I mentioned, we're really close on a report. The reason we wanted to present kind of this outline is ask any questions. We're probably about 3 or 4 weeks away from having a draft report that would then go to the council, I would anticipate, where you could review the details and go from there before finalizing things. And I would anticipate another meeting with the council to maybe go through some of your questions on the details.
Can I get a couple of questions in on the irrigation share slide? So you, sounds like, I'm not sure if you're stating that you're proposing the same thing as what the slide shows. It sounds like, it looks like the slide is showing that you're looking for a credit for the shares that would, as far as a reduction in the hookup fees. That's what the slide is telling me, correct?
Yes, and so this is showing one example of so the hookup fee would be a way to reduce the user rate. If to say you go into phase 1A and each resident or connection pays a hookup fee of $2,000, that generates revenue to offset the capital costs and therefore reduce what your user rate is. So higher hookup fee, lower user rate, and vice versa. And so this would be the scenario. Say a $2,000 hookup fee was what was determined, and then applying a credit to the shareholders of some ratio or proportion of what that hookup fee or all of that hookup
That's
fee.
my question: is what ratio did you use for this slide here? Was it a one for a wave? I'm just trying to.
One share, one hookup fee. And so if you have multiple shares, it'd be multiple hookup fees. If it was a portion of a share, it would be that same ratio.
Okay.
And again, this is conceptual and something that we can look into in more detail. There's not a definitive way to go about that.
And then it looks like on that slide, you've got a color coding in there for Adair, Warm Springs East. But I guess I don't see any Adair in there. Is it just because the residents that we pick? Maybe I'm misunderstanding. That's not a color coding.
Yeah, I apologize. There's a longer list than this, and it's spread. Users are spread out over all of those different springs, and so it's complicated. Mr. Hafen's, we've got a report that will be part of the master plan in the appendix. But he's gone through each one of those and evaluated what each share in each one of those springs amounts to as far as water volume and so forth. Just those are shown there just to indicate that there's multiple aspects of that irrigation system.
Yeah. We look forward to hearing more about this. Is there any final things you can share with us as the council? I'd love this to come back to our council to discuss it further. We're running out of time for this particular session.
Yeah.
Now, is it my understanding, City Manager Roger Carter, is this going to be coming back to the council for more updates and more discussion?
I think there's still work to be done, correct?
Yeah, so we're doing the report right now. The actual document, draft document, we should be ready here in July. So
and council
to the council in July, give you about a month to get through that, and then we'll actually have another work meeting.
Great. We thank you so much for the update at this time. If there's anything else that needs to be said, please let us know. Otherwise, can we move on from this item? Thank you so much, presenters. We appreciate that, Mike Shaw and our engineering company. Thank you. Our last item, item number 4, has been notified to me that this is not a time-sensitive issue and has been asked if we could just move this to our next council session. In this, I just got this notification from City Manager Roger Carter that this is not a time-sensitive issue. We can push it to later. Well, I am looking for a vote to say adjourn and start up our next meeting pretty much. But just letting the council.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
You know what? With that being said, I have a motion for an adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Council will have a 5-minute adjournment session in which we will start at 6:05 for our next council meeting. Taking the words out of my mouth there, Council. Okay, so what I'm going to do is when we still in this water sessions and donations. I couldn't help but think how much.
Hello, who do we have on? This is Dave Nazel. And which item are you here with, or are you? Item 9A, I think, for the annexation. Annexation. Yeah, is the meeting started? They're in a break right now between their two meetings, and we're muted. They can't hear us right now. Okay. So I'll take it off mute when it's your item. Is this the best number to be on? Because I had two different phone numbers. This one seems to be working fine. Also, did they send you a web URL? You don't have a computer with you, do you? Because the web URL that you can actually see the meeting in the tab. But the phone's fine. This is fine. Okay. I'll just hang out on this one then. All right. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yep.
City Manager Roger Carter, are we ready to go live with this meeting?
I think so, but I'm going to defer to Steve.
Okay, Steve, we're waiting for your voice to assure us that we're ready to go.
I think we're there, but
well, interrupt me if for some reason this isn't ready to go. I feel like we're ready to move forward with this meeting. Good evening. Welcome to
You are good to go.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome to our Washington City Council meeting. Today is June 10th, 2020. Our current time is roughly 6:15. There's a public notice that is given that we are holding a electronic meeting with a limited active meeting here at Washington City offices. It is hereby given that the Washington City Council will hold a public electronic meeting on Wednesday, June 10th, 2020 at 6 p.m. hosted at Washington City office located at 111 North, 100 East, Washington City, Utah. The meeting will be broadcast via YouTube Live, linked online at washingtoncity.org/meetings. We will start our meeting with an invocation. I will be giving that invocation today, and our Pledge of Allegiance will be given by Councilman Craig Coates. Dear God in heaven, we thank thee for this day which we have to come together and discuss the liberties and the needs of our community. This time we pray for a special blessing upon us that we may be mindful and aware of the needs of our nation and our city, that we may say and act in a way that promotes brotherhood, respect, and awareness to the needs which we have. We are so grateful for each member of this nation, and we pray that we may continue to seek for all rights afforded to us through the Constitution of this great nation. We pray a special blessing upon us and those who participate, that there will be civility in all that we say and kindliness in our response, that we may promote a good discussion and further respect and enhance the great freedoms which we have, and do so in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please rise and repeat after me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Coates. Agenda item number 1, to approve the agenda. May I have a motion from the council regarding the agenda?
I'll make a motion we approve the agenda outlined for the June 10th, 2020 City Council meeting.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I reviewed the agenda and I will second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Staley?
Staley, aye.
Councilman Ward?
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye. Councilman Ivy?
Ivy, aye.
Councilman, my goodness, my mind is
Aye.
blank.
Coates, aye.
Thank you, Coates. Councilman Coates, appreciate that. Item number 2, are there any announcements at this time that the council would like to bring forward before we read in our Washington City royalty?
I have one quickly. It's in reference to our own Washington City Broadway Bound, the Center for Music and Theater. They're having a grand opening June 13th at 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. where they'll have raffles and performances, tours, and more. They're asking you to come and join them. It is free. And just for more background, Broadway Bound offers vocals, acting, dance, Tiny Toons preschool, and musical theater classes for ages 3 to 18. And then they're also telling you not to miss Matilda this summer and Willy Wonka this fall. And their website is www.broadwayboundcmt.org.
Awesome. Thank you, Councilman Ivy. Councilman Staley.
Yes, one other announcement. This Friday, 8 a.m. at Sullivan Park, we will be meeting to ride what they call Ride the Missing Link. And so this is a bike ride from Sullivan Park in Washington City to Sun River in St. George. And the missing link is a portion of trail that goes along the Virgin River that connects our two cities. So this will be a great event for anyone who would like to meet there at Sullivan Park at 8 a.m. And we will cut the ribbon and we'll ride all the way down to Sun River. So I will be there. I hope to see some of you there as well.
So, Councilman, does that also include our friends to the west, St. George, and their council and mayor also?
It does, yes. Kai Nordfeldt with the Southwest Utah Public Health has worked with some on their council and their mayor. And of course, I'm on the Active Transportation Committee, so we've been involved on that way. But but it's a coming together of sorts, and it's a great connection for both of our cities.
Well, I need to find a bike. All my bicycles have motors on them, so I need to find one, and then I will be there.
I'll loan you a bike.
So that is this Friday
at 8 a.m.
This Friday, that's going to be June 12th at 8 a.m. at our very own Sullivan Park.
Any other announcements at this time? One other kind of fun announcement just down the corner here, our local, one of our barber shops, Mike's Barbershop, got regional recognition like in our area for just being the best barbershop in Southern Utah. So kind of fun little things to pick up as we go. We do have an item 2A, introduction of the 2020-2021 Washington City Royalty. This has a unique story to it. Friday, June 5th, we held the first ever Princess Pageant outdoors. The COVID-19 virus restriction would not allow the pageant to be held in a building. Due to the great brainstorming and planning of the Royalty Advisor, Taylor Blake, we were able to have the first ever outdoor pageant in Veterans Park. With a limited number of audience attending, 8 girls braved the weather and performed outstandingly in the fields of personal interviews, talent, poise and presentation, and on-stage questions. We would like to introduce the 2020-2021 Royalty, Miss Spirit, McKinley Pickett, second attendant, Sydney Van Wagner, first attendant, Kyra Johnson, and Princess Isabel Marson. We want to thank all the contestants for their hard work and the example they present as talented youth in our city. They are not here today, but as you can see this beautiful pitch here, this is our wonderful Washington City pageantry that we have. So we'd like to just offer a special congratulations. Normally these ladies would be here just presenting like they promised they would as our pageantry. So congratulations to each of you. We admire your effort and congratulations for being here. So we'd love to shake your hand and take a picture, but this will have to work for today. So congratulations. If there's nothing else, let's move on to item 3, declarations of abstentions and conflicts. Seeing that are known,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I looked up and looked for eyes and it looked like you were down. So
I looked for my paper to find it. I need to abstain from item 8A.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman Coates. Any others? Okay, let's move on to item 4, consent agenda. Item 4A, approval of minutes, consideration to approve the minutes from the City Council meeting of 5/27/2020. 4B, board audit report, consideration to approve the board audit report for May 2020. Item 4C, local consent, consideration to approve local consent for St. Helens Restaurant LLC applicant Mei Fong and Gary Fong. And item 4D, final plat, consideration to approve the final plat for Desert Flower Phase 1, located approximately Bella Vista Drive and Telegraph Street, applicant Stephen Howcroft. Seeing that as the consent agenda, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion we approve the consent agenda for the items, the approval of the minutes for 5/27/20, the board audit report for May of 2020, the local consent for the St. Helens Restaurant, and then the final plat for the Desert Flowers Phase 1 final plat.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Roll call vote. Councilman Coates.
Coates, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Clough, aye.
Staley, aye.
Ward, aye. It was Ward for the second. I think we need to read the second name off so that she can record it. Because she's not in the room.
Who was our second?
It was me.
Okay, Ward for the second. Yeah. Thank you, Councilman Ward. That passes unanimously.
Would you like us to do the same thing as Councilman Coates would like to make a motion just to make it simple?
At this time, if we could just, if you make that motion, please put your name with that motion. Thank you, Councilman Ward. That being said, let's move on to item 5, subdivision name change. Item 5A, a consideration of a name change approval of the amended and extended preliminary plat for the homesteads at Stuckey Farms to the Homesteads Phase 1 through 5 and Homestead Heights Phases 1 through 3 subdivisions and Stuckey Farms located at approximately 300 North Rock Creek Drive, applicant South Landing LLC. Normally we turn this over to Drew. Drew, are you ready to address this?
I am. Can you hear me okay and see the exhibit on your screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. As stated, the applicant's requesting approval of the name change to for a preliminary plat. The current approved preliminary plat is just labeled the Homesteads at Stuckey Farms. And again, the applicant's wishing to break this up into two different sections, and I'll get to those in a second. The Homesteads, which will be basically phases 1 through 5, and then the Homestead Heights phases 1 through 3. The development is still located at the address given within the Stuckey Farms PCD. The Homesteads and Homestead Heights at Stuckey Farms will still have 108 approved lots covering 43 plus acres. Staff's reviewed the proposed name change, and the preliminary plat still conforms to the PCD zoning, and which is part of, again, the Stuckey Farms Plan Community Development approval. The subdivision is also in compliance with subdivision ordinance of the city. Planning Commission reviewed this request at their June 3rd, 2020 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the name change request for the Homesteads at Stuckey Farms to the new proposed the Homesteads and the Homestead Heights at Stuckey Farms subdivision onto the council, and that carries with it the original findings and the original conditions. So I'm just going to point out, I think I've got my pencil, I'll get it here. Of course, phase 1 is still here. And then phase 2 down here, phase 3, 4, and 5. And then the Homestead Heights, the new area is over here with the blue line. And then you see phase 1, 2, and 3 for it. And so that's simply all that there is on this. And they're just trying to break that up that way. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that the council has as it relates to this name change.
Are there any questions, council? Are there any questions for applicant? Seeing that there are none, council, I would like to entertain a motion.
And Mayor Pro Tem, I'll make that motion. Seeing that is just a simple name change, I'd like to make a motion to make a name change from the Homesteads at Stuckey Farms to the Homestead phase 1 through 5 and the Homestead Heights phase 1 through 3 subdivisions at Stuckey Farms, located approximately 300 North Rock Creek Drive.
Motion made by Councilman Ivy. Do I have a second?
Second, Councilman Ward.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Councilman Staley.
Staley, aye.
Ward.
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Coates, aye.
It passes unanimously. Let's move on to item 6, public hearings. Public hearing for consideration to approve a resolution to adopt the Washington City 2020-2021 fiscal year budget for the funds of Washington City. Administrative Services Director, Kimberly Roosh.
Hi, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. It's great to be able to come before you today. Back on May 13th, the tentative budget was presented to the Council and then put out for public review. So that tentative budget as proposed was for $76,710,718. Since that time, there has been one additional cost that has been identified that we would like the Council to consider as part of this. Our dispatch services are provided through the City of St. George, and since the tentative budget was submitted, we have received additional information from the City of St. George that those dispatch fees are increasing in the amount of $26,447. So that is the increase amount that we would need to add to the budget in order to cover the cost of that dispatch services. And at this time, that's the only other additional item that we have identified. With that item there, that would bring the new total budget, if approved by council, to $76,737,165.
Kimberly, this is Councilman Staley. Is that an expense that falls within the general fund? I'm looking at the, so that's a general fund that would be added to that particular line item.
That is a general fund item. The cost of those dispatch fees are shared between the police and the fire department.
Great. Thank you.
Kimberly, this is Councilman Ivy. I just had a question on the line item for delinquent property taxes. The anticipated shortfall is $90,455,000. Could you just shed some light on that in light of COVID-19 and some of the cutbacks and what you're anticipating for delinquent property taxes, or if that covers it?
Just for a correction, that was 90,000, not 90 million on the delinquent property tax there.
Tonight with this water thing, and it's
that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that people are aware. So with the delinquent property taxes at this time, no, we are not aware of any or have necessarily a projection that the delinquency will be farther behind. These payments are payments that would roll in November. The certified tax rate will come before the council at your next council meeting for adoption. We do have the total of the property taxes, but in regards to delinquent taxes, we are not necessarily anticipating any changes to that at this point.
I appreciate that. And just one follow-up question, and we talked about this at the beginning of our budget discussion, and that is last year I fielded a lot of questions from our residents that didn't really understand how the capital projects are reflected on a city budget. I would just, again, like to ask that we have maybe a different document that just kind of identifies what those capital projects are and how they affect the budget, and maybe a direct reference between our total in budget last year and total budget this year. Just in way of a suggestion, I'm sure in your expertise and your awesome ability, you can find out the best way to go forward with that. But that's just something that I would like to see. Thank you.
Any further questions from council? Councilman Staley.
Kimberly, Councilman Staley here. Looking at the 5-year capital budget plan, and I was trying to pull it up here, so I'm just going to go a little bit off memory. We have, for a few years out, allocation of, I want to say somewhere in the range of $900,000 for a ladder truck. But I know we've recently entered into an agreement with Hurricane Valley to lease a ladder truck sooner than that. Do we need to remove that from the 5-year capital budget plan? I had emailed out on that, and I just didn't hear back. I didn't email you on that, by the way. I know you would have replied, but I just wanted to know if we ought to make that change, given the fact that we're in the process of moving forward with a lease agreement in conjunction with Hurricane Valley on that.
We can certainly remove it from the 5-year plan that is presented. The only funding that impacts the budget are items that are listed in the 2021 column. The fire truck at this point is not included in that, as you are aware. The main reason that we haven't included that is it really depends on review of the agreement and how the funding originally comes out, on what the ownership is and how that is determined, on how we'll report it. So once everything is kind of finalized with that, there may be a budget opening to add the expense related to our agreement. It may just be debt service payments. It may not hit us until 2022. It depends on how the plan is laid out for that. But we can certainly remove it if you would like off of the capital plan for the year that it was presented, which I think was in maybe 2024.
That sounds right. And actually, Kimberly, I am so in favor of this. I think it's a great thing, and I think it's a great approach to getting that needed service. So I'm okay to leave that on the capital year budget, just noting that likely we'll have one leased prior to that. And of course, that would then be removed at that point. But I think I'm comfortable moving forward with that included.
Further discussion from council.
Is that on 2024? That's where it shows us now, right?
Yeah, it was 2024.
I appreciate Councilman Ivy. He prints these, and sometimes I can't find them on my iPad. But yes, it looks like a 2024 950,000. So we're far enough out that I think it's okay to leave that as a placeholder unless somebody has a strong opinion on that. But it sounds like we'll likely have that ladder truck in place, before then.
Further questions or comments from council? There are no further questions or comments at this time. I entertain a motion.
So did we?
Oh, this is a public hearing. We open this public hearing. At this time, make a motion to close this public hearing.
Yeah, did we read off that the public hearing is actually opened already? Because it's really,
this is a continuation of an open public hearing.
Well, it's that it's. I'm gonna get back to this.
Well, isn't the public hearing? It's just read online. I guess we would ask.
We're taking away.
Oh, Roger looks like he has.
Comment.
Yes, Councilman.
We're not taking comments here tonight, right?
Right. Are there any comments?
So the budget has been out for public hearing for the requisite time. And so what you'll want to do now is close the public hearing, and then Denise will read any comments that have been received. So we're handling the public hearing the way we always have. It's been out for its requisite time. And so that's kind of where we're at now.
Do we read the public comment before closing the public hearing or after?
I think we've done it after historically.
Okay.
So go ahead. I just say we make Councilman Coates makes a motion to close the public hearing on item 6A.
Councilman Staley, second.
Okay, Councilman Coates.
Coates, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ward, aye.
Staley, aye.
Okay. Quarter Denise Bullock, please read in the comments.
We received one comment on this public comment. It is from a Christine Clayton Tuller. I believe you'll understand. I am concerned about the proposal of a zone change request by Curtis Anderson at 100 South, 100 West. Our family home sits directly to the south across the street. What will the change involve and how will it affect our home and the area and the property values?
Thank you for reading in that comment.
So it sounds like that was applied to the budget. When does that zone change actually come before us?
I have not seen anything on this zone change.
Can staff help me understand when will we even hear on that?
Yeah, let me just jump in for you. That notice went out just recently. The Planning Commission will hear that zone change in a public hearing next week. You'll hear it basically about a month from now.
Okay. Can we make sure that comment gets moved? It looks like it was accidentally put on the wrong.
What would be the provision for doing that in the future? This is kind of a new thing for us, but.
I think our recommendation is we'll just make sure it moves. I felt it was important that since it was submitted for the budget to be read, but Denise can mark these. We'll make sure they're moved. We'll make them so that that they don't have a burden of doing it again. I don't think we'll see this often, and if they do, we'll take care of it.
We appreciate people participating. Sometimes it's not as easy as we think it is. So thanks for making that happen.
Very nice.
All right. Seeing that
I did have my hopes up that somebody made a comment on the budget. I just.
We always hope.
I told my wife to.
Yeah.
Always hope. That being said, let's move on to item 7, resolution. Consideration to approve a resolution of 2020-08 adopting the Washington City 2020-2021 fiscal year budget for the funds of Washington City. Administrative Services Director Kimberly Roosh.
Thank you again, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. So the request that we would have would be the one modification to the resolution as identified in the public hearing, which would be to include the dispatch fee cost increase, making the total budget $76,737,165.
Are there any questions from council? If there are no more questions or discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. We approve the resolution 2020-08 adopting the Washington City 2021-2021 2021 fiscal year budget for the funds of Washington City with the amendment and amount of $76,737,165.
A motion by Councilman Coates,
Councilman Ward, second.
roll call vote, Councilman Staley.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I will just add a little bit of comment.
Forgive me.
Before I vote here. This has been a process, a great process, where there has been a lot of dialogue and going back and forth, especially as we've considered the timing of trying to forecast and control expenses and put a budget together. And it's been a great process. This is a good budget. Many of the projects are related to water and power and sewer and roads and the things that a city ought to be about. So this is a good budget. It's a budget that's less than last year. And we are still a very fast growing city. So although it's not a perfect budget, I can support this budget, and I appreciated the process that staff and the council went through to get here. So Staley, aye.
Councilman Ward.
Thank you for those comments. Right on point. Very good. Councilman Ward, aye.
Likewise, much appreciation to the dialogue and the work that's gone on before this. Though nothing is perfect, sometimes you go with complete. Councilman Clough, aye.
And I would just like to add my consensus also on that is that there's nothing that causes me more solemnity than to consider spending the funds of the people. We take that very serious. We understand that those monies are worked hard for, and we consider that a privilege and a deeply respected right to do that. And having said that, Ivy, aye.
Well, on that, since everyone else spoke, I agree with everyone. And when I read that number, my heart jumped a little bit because that's a big number. But I think it's good for the city, and I'm glad we're able to move forward with it. And Coates, aye.
That passes unanimously. Let's move on to item 7B. 7B, consideration to approve a resolution of Washington City condemning racism. Councilman Staley and Chief Williams. At this time, there has been a copy brought before me. I'll go ahead and read this in. Resolution number R2020-09. A resolution of Washington City condemning racism. Whereas in Washington City, its mayor, city council, chief police, entire Washington City Police Department, and employees citywide are deeply saddened by the tragic events that have been recently occurred across the country. And, oops, make sure I read this correctly. Whereas racism, prejudice, and hate have no place in our city, we will continue to encourage an inclusive community built on trust and with dedication to civil rights and against all forms of racism. We will continue to ensure the constitutional rights of every person who lives, works, and visits our great city. And whereas the Washington City Police Department has long embraced a diverse department with a reputation for employing men and women of high ethical standards who understand and are taught the importance of equal treatment of every citizen and business owner. And whereas Washington City police officers receive annual training that significantly exceeds the amount required by the state of Utah. And whereas the Washington City Police Department encourages civil dialogue and open communication with all individuals and groups. And whereas the men and women of Washington City Police Department appreciate the overwhelming support from our community, our great community, and extend its commitment to function as a team to achieve its mission to protect and serve and to fulfill expectations of honesty, transparency, and fair treatment for all citizens and visitors. Therefore, be it resolved that the mayor, city council, and all employees of Washington City do hereby stand steadfast with all citizens of Washington City against racism and continue our commitment to support racial equality and civil rights for all. Passed and approved this day, 10th of June, 2020. That being said, let's move on to item 8, quitclaim. Item 8A, a consideration to approve the quitclaim of real property involved in a lot line adjustment between Washington City and Mike Hall, located on the southwest corner of 300 East and Telegraph Street. Power Director Rick Hansen.
Mayor Pro Tem and Council, I'm glad to be here. This quitclaim deed represents really the final piece of the Staley Substation project that we have to complete. At the onset of the project, we had Alliance do a site survey to locate all the existing equipment and different facilities that were at the site, and we discovered that the north retaining wall and the current city property description didn't match. That retaining wall's been there for at least the most recent part, about 18 years. And we were able to complete the sub and do what we needed to without disturbing that wall. And so basically this cleans up an overlap or on that property and gets it to the right place for Mike Hall, and it didn't have a negative impact on the project. So you have your description and the exhibit. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Any questions at this time, Council?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, just a couple of questions. Rick, as this has come forward, you've obviously had it surveyed, and this property in question has been on Mr. Hall's property and he's been using it. Do you see any future needs that we need to address before we transfer this, or is there an easement or anything along those lines that we need to consider?
Yeah, let me share my screen here real quick if I can. I'm not as a Zoom expert like Drew is, so bear with me. Okay, can you see that screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can see it.
So basically this north parcel, and it's about 16 3/4 feet wide by about 204 feet. And let me actually bring up this aerial photo. And so this is the property line here we're talking about. As you can see, this portion of the substation we built was on the north side, and we have space to build a second bay if needs be in the future. So I don't really see any need or reason that would ever cause a problem. We did retain an easement along this side because part of our ground grid is in there. In fact, you can see this little cut on the cement because this is a metallic fence, and so the ground grid actually extends up here on top. But I don't see any negative future impacts by doing this.
Okay, further question from Council?
So we're how does that work though? We're initiating the quit claim deed to Mr. Hall, correct?
That is correct. And then that'll clean up, like if you did a property search on either of these properties, then you would have the obvious common boundary showing up on both.
And my understanding is there was kind of a verbal agreement in the beginning where he kind of built a wall. Part of it was he built the wall and then got the land, and so I think
that's what I've heard. I have found no official written documentation of that, but that's what's been said. And like I say, it's at least this east part. We found a permit from the city in 2002, and the west part was done before that. So I can't speak to all the details on that history.
Kind of filling in stuff that maybe should have been done before. But.
Exactly. And we just wanted to make sure it's cleaned up and the site's ready to go and there's no confusion in the future.
That's good.
I'm curious, what would trigger the expansion of this particular area to increase the utility? How will we use this space in the future?
I would, if by chance if the industrial area took off and had a large load or something like that, would be probably the main empty area that would be served from this sub. But again, so we've allocated this future bay would be built here to the south, basically in between the two dark colored rocks, and it would look just like this one, but set over here. So it's not in the current 5 or even 10-year plan at this time.
Okay, well, awesome. Are there any further questions from council on this item? Seeing there are none,
if you wouldn't mind, I just had a couple of comments to make on it before you potentially make a vote.
Please.
So Rick, also just to make sure we get on the record that by doing this, what in essence is a lot line adjustment, and quit claiming the portion that has already been historically used by the party receiving the excess land, there's no loss in value to the city's property, right?
Not that I can see.
Okay.
I mean, it will remain as the sub, I think, for a lot of years. So.
And so, yeah, okay. So having made that, also any motion that's made, so just bear in mind that our process, our land use process for doing a lot line adjustment is applying for it through our community development director, who's the official that has been given the authority to approve lot line adjustments. So with your motion to approve, if that's what you're going to do, quit claiming this portion of land over, it would also be conditioned upon approval by the community development director of the lot line adjustment itself.
Can we not just get approval of that now?
Well, I think it, well, Drew, you can tell me if typically it just goes through him. That's how we would generally do this anyway. The city needs to do two processes. One, we're giving away some land. That's why the legislative body's involved. The lot line adjustment itself has been the authority has been delegated to Drew to take care of it, which means we don't have to go into even any more detail at all to the city council in terms of that. But Drew, if you have any input, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I don't see any problem. I just couldn't do the, push the lot line adjustment application through until this was done. So as soon as this is approved by the council, it's a simple application. All the exhibits are in place. Shouldn't be any problem. Well, what we end up doing on an approval is writing a letter to the county saying the city's accepted this lot line adjustment. And so we'll just follow through with that after this has been approved by the city council.
Thank you, Drew.
Any further questions from council at this time? Seeing there are none, I would entertain a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem, I would make that motion. Make a motion to approve the quit claim of real property involved in a lot line adjustment between Washington City and Mike Hall, located on the southwest corner of 300 East and Telegraph. Also conditioned upon the approval of Community Development Director, Mr. Elliman.
So my question is that necessary? I mean,
it seemed possible to include within that. I don't see it as being redundant. So
I'll second the motion.
With our own regulations, it is necessary. The only reason it's a two-step thing here is because it's city land that can't just be given away without the legislature's approval. Otherwise, you all would have never seen this one because it's a simple lot line adjustment, which Drew handles administratively.
Does your question been answered there, Councilman Ward?
No, it's just my understanding. This was thought that this was done some time ago. So I hate to put extra provisions on it and hold it up further. But
we have a motion and a second. Councilman Staley.
Staley, aye.
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ivy, aye.
That passes unanimously. That being said, my deepest apologies on our last item, Resolution 7B. I treated more of a proclamation than a resolution. We did not get a council vote on that. I'll read it one more time. Resolution 7B, consideration to approve a resolution of Washington City condemning racism. And we'll look for a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem, a motion that we approve Resolution R 2020-09, a resolution of Washington City condemning racism.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. Ivy.
Councilman Coates.
Coates, aye.
Councilman Ivy.
Ivy, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ward, aye.
Staley, aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item 9, annexation. 9A, consideration to accept and move forward with an annexation application for the Enclave annexation located at approximately 2855 South, 2240 North, 240 West, applicant Capital 5 LLC.
Council, this is Denise. Thank you for this great meeting tonight. I just want to let everyone know that Capital 5 LLC has submitted an application for an annexation on behalf to L. Dawn and Virginia Starling Trust and Julie Baker. They have proposed an annexation of approximately 7.57 acres. On the map you can see it's just south of Merrill Road between 20 East and 240 West. This particular parcel does fall in our Washington City Master Annexation Plan area. Once this property is annexed, it would be, thank you, it would be boundaries of Washington City on the east side and on the west side, causing somewhat of an island to the north and then a little bit of kind of a jog right there. I did talk to the applicants to let them know that there is a possibility that there could be a problem with creating an island within the county property. They did go over and talk to the county, the land use authority, and let them know that there had been some changes in state law that would help clear up problems such as this. And so they recommended that he go ahead and move forward with this annexation. What we're looking for tonight is just the approval of the council and the recommendation to move forward with this annexation. The property that Drew has just marked on there for me is the property to the west is zoned. It's in the process of going through a zoning application. So it's just barely starting and they are requesting an R115 zone. The property to the east is an RA1 zone. So that property directly to the east is RA1 and that's all one ownership right now, I believe. The applicant is requesting that this this annexation for the Enclave annexation be rezoned when it comes in to an R115, which will match the property to the west. What should this be able to move forward? We will start with our review of the annexation. The city attorney Starkey and myself go through and we certify the annexation. And then once that's approved, we send it to the county and we officially start with this request. Are there any questions on this?
Council?
I don't have a question, Denise, but I do have a comment. Just for those that might be listening at home, this is county property and it is becoming surrounded by city property. So it will be become annexed into the city of Washington. And I just wanted to say I'm very happy to see that it's an R115 zoning.
I'd like to just make a comment that when we do get back to normal, I think we're going to have to get Drew some special tools just so he can do these cool drawings in the council chamber.
Hopefully this will stay.
Hey, the laser pointer was great, but this is definitely an improvement.
I thought that was Denise. She's better than Drew.
No, she has an assistant today.
The maps are mine, but Drew's helping me out a lot.
I have no comments. I think it makes total sense. And we're going to have these islands as we close off this last little piece of county property.
Well, so, but Denise, help me understand. So what legislation changed? Because previously we couldn't create an island, right?
Correct. And it's something that has been done legislative wise through the county. So I'm not exactly all of it, but I do know that there are other counties that have had the same similar problems where part of the property ownerships do not want to annex into a city, and it causes problems for the counties that they've gone through and have done something to allow these kind of things to happen. I wasn't quite sure about it, but they had gone over and they have talked to the county, which is the land use authority for everyone.
Yeah, so do you mind if I?
And if there is a problem, if there is a problem and it can't go through, then the annexation will just die at the county level.
Oh, okay.
Because once we go through our certification, we send it over to them. They do their public hearing, and then we do noticing and everything all over again and do ours, and then we have our public hearings. So it's quite a lengthy process, and if there's a snag anywhere along the way, it dies.
Gotcha. So and maybe this is to Drew, can just help me understand can you outline the county property currently? Where is the county? I'm just
everything that's the red line to the east of this property, that everything on the east side of that red line is Washington City, and everything on the west side of this property is Washington City. It's just that little bit in the middle that's kind of a snake shape. I don't know how you would.
County.
Okay. On my map, I was looking at the wrong property, so I see it now. Okay. So all of that. So we have
all of that's county.
Of creating.
It'll create 2 islands, but the county is the one that recommend that they move forward with it.
And I'm guessing they're recommending to move forward just because they can.
Little at a time, move it.
Anything that would just kind of allow those to flow into city property.
Yeah.
But this wouldn't. So I guess my question would be to staff, if we never get a resolution of having that island, and I think the one to the north is probably the bigger issue, but to north and south, if we never get a resolution to that, does that create problems for us? Once we put these in the city, we have the obligation to provide services to that, and an island creates the potential for us to bring services to an area.
I'm sorry. We already have services down 240 West, or most of the way down. That's part of the reason they picked up this annexation, is because they also are developing the property to the west. And so they have to bring the utilities into here anyway.
Yeah.
So they just picked up this property to help cover the cost for both sides of the road through that section.
Good.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I just want to make sure. I'm sure you would have brought it forward before, included in the presentation. I just wanted to double check. But it does make it so that we are responsible for taking care of those properties and providing.
Right.
So,
yeah. I'm sorry, Ted.
Council.
Yes, just one more comment, Mayor Pro Tem. If Council Starkey is on the line, I know last winter, spring, the League of Cities through LUA, which is the Land Use Authority of Utah, had some discussion about islands and how they were going to be brought forward. Could you shed any light on that, Council Starkey?
I couldn't remember, and annexation is one of those areas that the legislature somehow feels compelled to tinker with every year almost. And so Denise and I enjoy getting together to review these once or twice a year because it's changed from the previous year. I can't remember what specifically they did on the island and creating islands and peninsulas. But what they did was recognize that I think what they did was simply make it easier as long as the adjacent, either the county or the adjacent municipalities had no objection to doing what would otherwise be creating an island or a peninsula under previous law, as long as they all agreed, because what it does is it gets us closer to finally filling these gaps in, because at some point, unless you don't just kind of puzzle piece it in, it'll never get fixed, because everything creates an island or a peninsula in these remaining areas. I think that's what they did. They tried to make it so you can do it. So in the long run, we can fill these areas in as long as the adjacent municipality and county don't object to it. I think that was a change, but I can certainly get it more specific, but that's what I recall from it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments from council? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we, is it approve or accept and move forward with an annexation application for the enclave annexation located at approximately 2855 South, 240 West.
A motion from Councilman Coates.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Councilman Staley.
Staley, aye.
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Coates, aye.
That passes unanimously. On to, oh, pardon me, Denise, are there any questions? Okay.
Well, I think she's muted, but she looks like she's still talking.
I think she stepped out. Denise, if you need.
I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Denise. Appreciate your work. Item 10, Board of Adjustments appointments. Consideration to confirm the appointment members of Board of Adjustment. Mayor Nelson has talked with me about this, and I'd like to propose the names. This Board of Adjustment is called to handle just case-by-case items. Council will be hearing at least one in the near future, but this Board of Adjustments is an important process within our government. The names which have been proposed for the Board of Adjustments are Sam Barber, Rich Langner, Jake Hawes, Brad Chandler, and Nick Whitney. And these are the names which have been proposed, and these people will be brought together, trained, and given some issues to wade through on our behalf. And if it gets to us, great. If not, it's just something that's handled within our city for certain issues.
Mayor Pro Temp, if I may, I just want to say I appreciate always when the public can help the city. And I see this as a public service for them to take on this challenge, because typically if they have to look at it, it's a challenge between community members, and I'm appreciative that they're willing to look at it and be a part of the solution.
Thank you so much, Councilman Coates. Any other council members have anything to say?
I just echo that. Sorry. Yeah, just jump in on his comment and echo that. Yeah.
And I was just going to say that the names that I recognize on here, they're just outstanding men. They'll do a great service for our city.
I do look forward to the value they'll provide to the needs of our community. Thank you all who are serving on this in advance. We appreciate your service. That being said, let's move on to item.
Do we need to
that being
vote on
said,
that?
this is something we should probably vote on here. That being said, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. We approve the Board of Adjustments outlined. Do I need to reach each name? I would say Sam Barber, Rich Langner, Jake Hawes, Brad Chandler, and Nick Whitney.
To our Board of Adjustments.
For the Board of Adjustments. Thank you.
We have a motion by Councilman Coates.
Councilman Ward, second.
We have a motion and a second.
Coates, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Clough, aye.
Ward, aye.
Staley, aye.
That passes unanimously. On to item 11, report of officers from assigned committee. If we can just start on this side of the room, Councilman Staley.
Great. So our active transportation committee meeting is tomorrow, but the hot topics for that meeting will be e-bikes on our trails and trail etiquette. So if you have any thoughts or any insights on that, please relay that to me, and I will be sure to get that to the committee. But
Is there problems with that now?
It's problems when my 5-year-old rides his bike and doesn't think there's a left or right side. That's the problem. So I rode the trail the other day, and my constant word was stay right, and he constantly was on the left because he was trying to always pass his brother. So it was a constant battle all the way. But and then I did have a couple of guys get mad at me, but I'm like, hey, he's 5.
Yeah, give us some space.
The trails are certainly being used more than ever before. We'll put it at that. So they want to get out in front of a few little issues and and have some dialogue and feedback. So if you have any thoughts on that, seriously, let me know. And it's an active, good committee. So
is that
So I guess the
something?
speed discrepancy, I mean, between pedestrians and bikes, or you go speed. from
speed is an
bikes
issue,
to
especially with,
e-bikes.
with
Yeah.
the e-bikes, and not an issue with me. I'm just huffing pedaling on my fat tire mountain bike. But
I wonder if there's just more of just awareness that we can put on our city webpage of, hey, these are kind of the rules. I like the idea of doing rules and etiquette. Hey, the speed limit is 20 on typically trails, but those just kind of awareness I think is big. And that's kind of, I appreciate the effort. I think that's good. I spent a lot of time on the trails, but I've never really worried about it too much. I just deal with it. But like you said, it's really busy now. I was blown away with how many people were on the trails recently.
Yeah, I've never been on that trail before a month ago, and we've gone 3 times now. And for being a pedestrian on that trail, you better be careful because some bikes come whipping around there. But what a wonderful option we have for our community to recreate. It was so refreshing and beautiful and active, and people everywhere of different types. And I was surprised, as you have all noted, how many people were there. And it is refreshing to see so much happening. So I'm excited. So it's great. Any further comments or questions? Man, great job, Councilman Staley. I'm looking forward to that bike ride. Let us know how it went. I won't be able to be doing the riding, but I'm excited to say ready, set, go. So that's great. Councilman Ward.
My committees keep getting canceled. I'm reading a lot of emails, but I'm not attending very many meetings for them. I miss some of those good folks. So thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman Ward. For me, our biggest one is we have been given the opportunity of having the parade for the fair in Washington City this year. And so we have amazing people. We have Susan Lafayette, we have Marsha Whitney. They are working so hard to coordinate how that's going to work within our city. One of the main things that's been addressed so far is we're extending our parade route to encourage some social distancing. And so it will start where it normally does, but we'll jot over into Main Street and part of the path. So we're looking forward to having that parade coming down our new section of Main Street. And there will be a slight little kickoff area where there'll be some minimal booths and representation there. We're trying to figure out how that'll work. Some wonderful questions, but not all are not limited to, can we throw out candy? Can we pass out popsicles? There are some really unique questions that we're trying to answer that are not answered right now, but many are working on to figure out how to have our first parade in this new system of doing and distancing and socializing. So they are working very hard, and but we are very hopeful. We have been asked to be a part of the parade as a council because we will be the first thing seen after the color guard, and they would like us and anything within Washington City, such as our pageantry and our youth council. We're the feature city, and they would like us to be in it. So there will be much to be brought up to come on that. So that's been the main thing. And I'd just like to thank those if they're still watching at this point. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm trying to remember the approximate dates of the fair.
Oh, forgive me on that.
I could probably look it up, but you may know offhand.
Oh, I just had August. What was that again? August 4th. I was double checking on this, and the parade is on the Tuesday of that week. Okay. And so I know it's Tuesday, 6 p.m. and I was looking for the date, and I, for some reason, don't have it here on my notes. So it'll be in the evening. So it'll be an evening parade, and it's, we've probably got about 35 other questions that I'm trying to resolve for that right now that we don't know. So we appreciate that. If you're interested in mosquitoes, reach out to me. Man, we got some great opportunities there. And just as a general honest thing, to our community and to our council, if you hear of a place where there is an abundance of mosquitoes, we had a really calm session, and all of a sudden we had one trap that had like 2,000 mosquitoes in it. So once in a while there are those flare-ups. Please let our mosquito abatement know. And we have like really technological traps that let us know pretty close to the moment we have mosquitoes in it. And we start doing treatments and everything to make sure that that area is free from diseases that can be spread by mosquitoes. A big chunk of what we're doing now is actually treating mosquitoes as a larva compared to as an adult. And they're doing that because of their trapping. They're more aware of where those hot spots are, and we're driving things down. So It's a unique challenge because these mosquitoes like to migrate within our community, and it's been a fun process for me. I'm sure you guys are probably not as excited, but I'm just amazed at that service. It really has made a good dent in some horrible things that could happen.
Mayor Pro Temp, I'm glad you're on that committee. I don't want to learn the Latin name, and I'm glad somebody knows it. How about gnats? Do they treat the gnats? There've been more gnats this year, not necessarily in the city, but in some of the outer lying areas that I've been to. So.
Well, I can't say to a basic thing on that, but I'd have to follow up to verify.
Yeah.
When they go through their foggers, it's not very selective. So it kind of takes a big chunk of anything that's flying in that area that's a bug.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, most people are at that point. So incidental and non-intentionally, yes. Do they go for gnats? No, because they're not a vector for disease. So yeah.
Still bug me.
And that being said, Councilman Ivey.
Yes, Council, thank you. I just want to have an update on the CARES Act from the league. It seems like I've gotten well acquainted with Zoom and my computer, so it's very nice to be live tonight.
Yeah.
Update on the CARES Act. Utah was granted $562 million. Of that, a good majority of it went to Utah County and Salt Lake County, being that their population was over 500,000 people. Now that leaves $247 million for the state to allocate to local governments. And this is key right here, to non-budgeted necessary expenditures directly related to COVID-19. Those funds are available right now, and there is a process to apply for those funds. You have to, of course, validate the expense, and we've had some discussion on what those could look like for our city and some specific breakdown there. Funding for our city will be done in 3 tranches. That's another new word for 2020 that I can put on the list with COVID and a few others. The first tranche is available now, and the remaining 2 distributions could go later in the summer and early fall. And to you, Councilman Ward, I did reach out to the legislature about a specific question regarding fund balance. And, you know, I don't know that had much to do with it, but the legislature is addressing that this summer in their summer session with the idea of maybe increasing that fund balance amount, because there has been a lot of outreach from the city or from the state, like you did, with your concerns that maybe we needed more in reserve. And so I will keep you up to date on that, but there's an anticipated summer session for the legislature to discuss that.
Thank you.
And the league on their last town hall with officials from the Governor's Office of Management and Budget and State Auditor's Office explained how our city will apply for those funds. And again, as they relate to COVID-related costs. And just for information, the total allocation for Washington City was $2,513,562. The first distribution could be $837,854. Now I have to report on something that is a lot lighter and much more enjoyable. And that is last night, we had a very nice time out at Mrs. Carmen Snow and Stan and Carmen Snow's new home. We had a youth council party. And during that party, they awarded scholarships and they honored graduates. And with your indulgence, I'd like to share some of those. Washington City Youth Council graduates for the 2020-2021 year are Mackenzie Welch, James Holt, Caleb Adams, Eliza Smith, Brooke Hall, Cambry Richardson, who was also the mayor, Rebecca Hughes, and Jacob Sorensen. The scholarships were also presented last night at the city awards to the youth council, and Rebecca Hughes won a $500 scholarship, and she plans to attend Dixie State in the fall. Jacob Sorensen also received a $500 scholarship, and he plans to attend Dixie State also. And then, as I mentioned, Cambry Richardson, who is the mayor, she received a $1,500 scholarship, and she plans to attend Dixie State. But as she received the award, she said tearfully, "Now I have my schooling paid for." So just know that this is a great opportunity for the youth of our city to learn leadership skills and learn parliamentary procedure and to take an active part in the good things of our city. And the last thing that I would mention is that the princess for this year, the Washington City Princess, is Isabel Marston, who was also on the Youth Council, and she is a senior at Crimson Cliffs High School. Thank you.
Councilman Coates.
On the solid waste board, we have our meeting Monday, but a couple of the items we're working on that's on the agenda is basically the agreement with the waste collections. So we're working on that, and hopefully we'll have this done by the end of the year, I guess I'll say. So we're moving forward on negotiations on that, and that's all the committees I have, but I'll have a better update next council meeting after our meeting on Monday.
Thank you, council, for your service in these committees. It makes us a better council and better support our citizens. So thank you all for your service in doing that. We have item number 12, moving on to city manager report. City manager Roger Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Before I just update the council on just a couple items, I did want to tell you all that when I was young, my mother always let me run behind the fogging machines going down the street, and I can promise you they're very safe and they have no long-lasting effects.
We appreciate that admission.
So just a couple of quick updates that you might find of interest. Our water warehouse, of course, is being constructed. That should be completed in September. On our streets, which is where we've had quite a bit of work lately, the Parkway, I hope you've all had the chance to go drive the Parkway from Washington Parkway exit up to the Green Springs area. That is complete, as well as the extension of Main Street to Washington Parkway. Great connection right now. That Main Street to Washington Parkway is just I still think people are trying to figure out that that's open, and so that's why I'm kind of emphasizing it. People recognize that, and it really can keep them from going through that whole intersection there at Green Springs and the interchange.
Roger Carter, a quick thing. We made it a date night Friday night to try to count cars. Let's just say not many people know it's open yet.
Yeah,
watching.
Great connection. So I hope you as a council will just drive up there too. They've done just a beautiful job on that Parkway. And so we're really excited about that. The maintenance project, the slurry project for this year is now complete. Main Street, you can see there really is some really visible progress on Main Street going on. We're finishing the over excavating we finished the over excavating from 400 North to 100 North. The final over X will be done this week. The road base is being placed as they do that, and curb and gutter will be starting next week. Going up there. If you do go up to Main Street, of course you reroute, but right at 400 North, you can pick up Main Street again, and you can see the flood control treatment that is going to be a part of Main Street on that block there. You can see the landscaping rocks beginning to be put into that area as well. So, I mean, we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and a big expression of appreciation to the Main Street residents who really have been super through this whole process and really put up with a pretty disrupted portion of their lives. So we appreciate that. We are working on design for the Washington Dam Road.
Roger, excuse us. There's a question by Councilman Ward.
Almost a frivolous question, but is there different colors of rocks? Is that why they laid them in that way? Is they gonna mix colors for the deck?
Mike's going to be chuckling at this because this whole landscape rock has been almost the bane of my existence the last little while. But I don't know where they finally decided. It was just a one color. I know that they were trying to look at a mixed color. Now, where they ended up with that, I cannot I cannot tell you. I will tell you though, that whatever it is, whether it's that single color, whether it's a mixed color, it really will be really, really beautiful. And the rock is
It looks like a single color at this moment.
it is a single color at this moment. I know Barry was trying to possibly mix it, but whether that was going to be an option or not, we didn't know. But it really is going to be beautiful. That rock that they've got in there right now is just a really beautiful rock too. Let me see, where was I? Oh, Washington Dam, working on design of Washington Dam Road. I know that people have had some interest with respect to that, and that's a project we'll be doing this fall, of course. The 3650 south of the farms. That property has been agreed upon, and so we're proceeding with the purchase using COG funds with respect to that road. The Parkway signal, this is Parkway and Telegraph. I'm pointing. This is Parkway and Telegraph. That ran into just a little bit delay. The signal heads got back ordered due to the COVID issue, but we're hoping to see them next week. So we're just a little behind, a couple weeks behind on that project, just because of the back order of the signals. But other than that, that's moving along pretty well, and hopefully we'll see those next week. With the aerial view that Rick showed you on the Staley sub, I'll just report the Staley sub is complete. Landscaping's done, looks really nice. There's only a few of us that think there is some beauty in a substation, but they've done a beautiful job with the landscaping on Staley sub. And the final item is we've been talking about a Walmart tie-in on the power. It's a significant tie-in to us, and that's now been completed as well. So we're in good shape, I think, from a power standpoint, so we can bring the heat on. So I think those were the big projects, unless the council has any question.
Are there any further questions to council? That being said, thank you for your report, City Manager Roger Carter. We appreciate your efforts and service. That being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Really?
I'm kind of looking at Councilman Ward here to make this motion, but I'll go ahead and motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Motion by Councilman Staley. Do I have a second?
Councilman Ward, second.
All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. This meeting is adjourned at
Glad to be back.
7:30-ish.
Yeah, good to see you folks. All of you. Maury's here, everything.
No, right? No car wrecks, no fire. Wait, there is a fire in Hurricane. You didn't get that one.